we're going to hear from Peter Hans, who there he is, Peter Hans, who is the project manager for Project Tullie, which is a massive project, rebuild, reskin, whatever you want to call it. Peter's going to explain to us what's been happening over the last 6 months or so, what stage they are at, and perhaps just one or two reflections on that lovely exhibition that's just opened as well, which is in a sort of slightly different part of the building from the bit that's being refreshed. I hope I've got that right. So we'll hear from Peter shortly and see a few slides of where that's got to, because I think Tullie is such an important part of the cultural jigsaw of the county. Whether you're in the north of the county or elsewhere, it's a really important thing to have going and succeeding and being run well and doing things that people want it to do. So we'll hear about that. We're also going to hear about Cumberlandia, which is a new festival taking place in West Cumbria in August. Abby Driver is one of the people that's helping to organise that. Having run a few festivals myself, I know how much pain Abby will be going through right now to try and keep that on track, get it together, start praying to the weather gods, etc., etc. So Cumberlandia looks great, and Abby's going to tell us about that as well. And then Imogen, formerly of this parish chair, now just a participant in the call. She also has many other strings to her bow, one of which is running Wayfarers Theatre, which does magical outdoors theatrical productions, and they've got one coming up, Wind in the Willows, in August as well, just on the outskirts of Cockermouth. And Imogen's going to share a few images and tell us how that is going, and also the deal that she's done with the weather gods as well to make sure it's a nice few days for when that is available to be watched. So lots of culture, lots of Cumbrian culture this morning. That's what this call is about, as much as giving you the opportunity to find out about things, talk about things that you're doing, etc., etc. And just a reminder, this is the last call until 6th of September. So without further ado, Peter, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming to this call. We do this every Friday, Peter. You're always more than welcome to join any other time. But I know you basically got a busy day job, which is being project manager for Project Tullie. So tell us how it's going. Amy will get your slides up and what the state of play is at Tullie. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Peter Hans. I'm officially called the Client Project Manager for Project Tullie, particularly Phase 2. There are several project managers around, one for the constructor, one for the overall project management system, and one for the client, which is me. Been with Tullie since last December. Brought in particularly to look after Phase 2 and to get it over the line. And I'm aware that you had a presentation from my colleagues last January. That was Amy and Anna telling you about Project Tullie in general. So I won't be repeating that, but as Tom says, I'll be bringing you up to date on progress, some of which you may be aware, and certainly touching on the Backing the Blues exhibition that opened last weekend. Can I have the next slide, please, Imogen? So very briefly, Project Tullie, as Tom said, it's a long-term series of separate works to transform Tullie from what it was into what we want it to be from our future plan. It's looking well into late in this decade and the next. We opened the costume gallery in 2021. Phase 2 is currently ongoing. There was a partial opening last weekend of the Backing the Blues exhibition. That's, as Tom says, it celebrates 120 years of Carlisle United. If you can go, you can see the exact detail of why it's 120 years and exactly why that date was picked rather than anything else. But it's very much brought together by the supporters collective. So it has a particular slant on how Carlisle United is integrated with the community, and things going on for the last while. It's been very, very well received. And if you haven't seen it and you're in Carlisle, or even make a special trip to Carlisle, I think the furthest place visited so far is from New Zealand, who found, I forget this right, I heard this story yesterday. She lost a partner a long time ago, sadly, and he'd made a rattle in his workshop something like 40 years ago, and they'd lost track of it, and she turned up and it was actually in the collection. So that was quite in the exhibition, so it's quite an emotional moment for them. So that was partial reopening. That was last weekend. The full reopening of Tullie will be this autumn. I would love to give you a date. That's currently not in public domain. We're working towards a particular set of plans. As people that know construction know, it's the plan lasts as long as the first hole in the ground. That's one of the things that we found. But the details of the reopening will start to be published over the next few weeks. So this is Phase 2. We'll be focusing on Phase 2 with a bit of a behind the scenes look at what's been going on for the last 6 months. Phase 3 is already in planning. It's actually got a funding application that should be heard in September, so we'll get a decision on that. Phase 3 will bring a huge amount of the collection on show, from going from a fraction of a percent to something like 20-odd% of the million items that Tullie has in the various store areas that are available to us. So if we have the next slide, please, Imogen. So phase 2 in many ways is something of an enabler for the work we want to do for the rest of Project Tullie. Again, people that are aware of the site, aware of Carlisle in general. It's an overhead looking from Castle Street over Tullie. The yellow shaded bit behind Castle Street is where there'll be a new infill building to link Castle Street with the atrium that was built in the 90s. For those that wish to know, it'll actually have a sedum roof, which will help with the general biodiversity. That'll be the main welcome area. That's currently we have a number of entrances. The two main ones were from the rotunda at the Annetwall Street, the dual carriageway end, or from the gatehouse end. We're trying to track, well, we will be bringing all visitors in through a new entrance that will be mainly accessed from the Castle Street Gatehouse Arch, or of course from Abbey Street Gardens themselves. Within the atrium, we're creating a new gallery called the Carlisle Gallery. Details of which I'm at pain of death not to release too much about, although I can say it's very heavily focused on the social, industrial and archaeological history of Carlisle. I've seen some sneak previews of it, mainly because I've seen the designs. We actually start the exhibition fit out next Thursday, so things are progressing nicely with that. But I can't tell you much more about it. We'll have one render to give a very small sneak preview of it. I would say phase 2 is very much an enabler for the rest of the work we want to do in Tullie over the next decade, basically. So have the next slide, please, Imogen. So once you come in through either Abbey Street Gardens or say primarily from Castle Street, you'll come to the new entrance, which is a stone archway, which is it's brand new. It's exactly matching the arches that are in Castle Street at the moment. The stone is from the same quarry that was used in the 1890s when the buildings were put up in the first place. So all the way through, we've clearly been working very closely with Roger Higgins and his team from Cumberland Council with the listed buildings and heritage consents. It's fair to say it doesn't quite look like that at the moment. So can I have the next one, please, Imogen? That's how it looks. I would say today, that was the last week. Cumbria Construction are doing a marvellous job. It's relatively straightforward to build something on a completely open site that's all theirs. Cumbria have the challenges of building in what's still an operating museum, although we don't have visitors. Curatorial work is still going on. Clearly, the collections are still around, so it's not a straightforward process. They're having to deal with listed buildings. They're having to deal with all sorts of things that we didn't know. And the one from yesterday, looking at this image, you can look at the scaffolding at the right, and you can see a couple of satellite dishes above that. They started taking that wall down yesterday because that'll be where the new staircase and lift shaft will be. And they found that what looks to be a simple wall is actually 3 layers of wall that have been built up over time. We have lots of, shall we say, surprises that come every time you break into a wall. You find something a bit surprising. So it's given them some challenges, experiences from many times ago when someone told me this will be a good experience, Peter. You know it's going to be painful. I think that's what they're finding at the moment. So go on to the next slide, please, Imogen. So once you go in through the archway, you'll be in the new welcome area, which will have the shop to the right. If you look through the shop, the windows there will be onto Castle Street. So access will only be through Tullie, but we will have a frontage onto the High Street, which is very important because some of the funds that we use includes the Future High Street Fund. So positioning Tullie on the high street has given us access to some of their funding as well. So the National Lost Heritage Fund are involved, Arts Council England are involved, plenty of funders, plenty of trusts and general foundations that are supporting Tullie developing to be a resource for the region. And this will be a theme for the next few slides, and it doesn't quite look like this. I can have the next slide, please, Imogen. Yeah, that's how it was. Oddly, there was a rainy day this week. I didn't have to work too hard to find the rainy days, but this is on Wednesday, I think it was. So yeah, we're looking into the shop. Most of the work has been formed. Things like the windows will be going in. Looking on this picture where you can see a black beam about 2/3 of the way up the brick pillars. Above that will be the arched windows that will view into the community space. The multi-purpose space will be above the shop. So that'll be accessed via the lift shaft and the staircase that was mentioned earlier. The wall just beyond has given us some surprises. And go on to the next slide, please, Imogen. So once you come into the new welcome area, the site has its challenges. Aside from walls that you start to break into and find multiple levels of wall, I think as people realise the whole of Carlisle is on a slope. And what our architects, DMR, have finally come up with is a way to rationalise the whole site onto 2 levels. The vast majority of the ground floor will be at the lower level, as you can see now, where I think like the children are walking, where the pram is. The higher area to the right will be access to the cafe, and there's a very gently sloping ramp between the two, which you can just make out beyond the pram. There's a wheelchair on that now. So we've brought the whole site onto one main level, with one area that's accessible to access the cafe. It's pretty much as it looks on there. There's been a couple of detailed design changes, but the terrazzo is in now, which if you go on to the next slide, please, Imogen. You can just about make out the terrazzo. So we're pretty much, that shot is taken from where the guy was sat on the corner of the raised area. Again, this was a couple of days ago. Most of the stuff is going in now. It looks like there's a lot to do. That's because there is a lot to do, but Cubby are working very well towards. We have some interim handover stages to allow exhibition fit out to start, which we'll get a quick look at that on the next one as well. So yeah, if you can go to the next one, please, Imogen. So we've now got the entrance desk, welcome desk behind us, and we're looking down to the new Carlisle Gallery, which is the only render that is in public domain yet of this one. It will look at the social, natural science, archaeological history of Carlisle. We won't have a blue stuffed animal on the left-hand side. That's just a placeholder, but it will be a full-size deer in that space. That's the celebrating the wild aspects of Carlisle. Highly interactive exhibition, and the detailed fit-out work of that, the cabinetry work, will start this week, which will take 2 to 3 weeks, and that'll be followed by some degassing and cleaning, and then collection fit-out alongside other works going on to give us the reopening in autumn. And the usual phrase, it doesn't quite look like that. And with the next slide, Imogen, that's how the area is looking. That's not fair to say it's like that now. Again, this is 2 days ago, but it's moved on a long way since then, because there's a partition going up to allow Rascal, who are a Newcastle-based specialist exhibition fit-out contractor. They start work, say, on Wednesday and Thursday to actually put the cabinets in for this area. So the decorating is just about being finished. And Cubby are exiting the area and building a partition between the two sites so that Rascal can complete their exhibition works. And go to the next slide, please, Imogen. So now looking back from the courtyard, which will be between Castle Street and the 90s atrium. You can see the brickwork of the 90s atrium there. And we're looking back into the welcome desk, which everyone's disappeared from. I'm quite surprised, because all the other renders have people in. This is the only one I've seen that doesn't have a person in. New courtyard, it's never been used for anything meaningful before, but this space will be accessible to Tullie and to users of Castle Street, because one of the things we want to do is develop the rest of Castle Street into a multi-use space, be it shared office space or general community use. The main part of phase 2 stops with creating the shop and the community space above, but an extension to it, which we're currently costing through and working through, is to bring at least a ground floor of Castle Street into use by the end of the year. And as ever, it's not quite like that. So Imogen will bring the next slide to show you how the courtyard is now. So it's pretty much the same spot as the end was shown. Again, quite a lot to do, but things like the deep beds that are required, so they're being dug at the moment. The drainage is being completed. The lighting for the steps is being completed. So everyone's really quite confident. They keep telling me I'm confident of hitting the deadlines that we've got in place for them. So we're very grateful to Cumbria. We have a very good working relationship with them, because as I said, things don't always go exactly to plan, but we share the challenges and we come up with solutions together. So we'll go on to the next slide, which will show us. So Drigsby was referred to in the presentation in January, and Drigsby was going on to exactly the same spot, but with a very deep blue wall behind Drigsby. It certainly does show the bones in much better aspects. I can't show you a current one because Drigsby is very literally under wraps. That we started by covering the skull and jawbone with Tyvek, and now the whole of the skeleton is covered. So I'm afraid they don't look very impressive at the moment, but we had to do that to protect them from general construction dust through this phase of the project. But it does look much better than against a brownish brick wall. Brown bone against brown wall is not a good look. Okay, I'll go on to the next one, please, Imogen. So the Gatehouse, grade 1 listed building, as is quite a lot of Tullie, has been severely neglected over the years. It was in use with Northumbria University, as people may be aware. Hasn't been used for some time, had issues with damp, which then became dry rot. We had a grant from Historic England to do something about that, and work for that is just about complete now. That we had to strip the roof, replace some timbers, re-lead the roof, replace some timbers, particularly on the second floor where there'd been damp had got in, which feeds the fungi, which becomes the dry rot. It's quite an extensive problem. We've also found that, without naming any names, in previous ownerships, there were some unusual decisions taken on protecting the building, and where it needed repointing, rather than being repointed, it was filled with silicon, which is not the best way to treat a building of this nature, which just traps the water in, which gets caused problems. So we're currently stripping out all the silicon and getting the whole building repointed, which in itself gave some challenges, because what colour do you repoint a building with? We went around Carlisle looking at how different buildings of this era had been treated, if they'd been repointed or if it's original, and what colour we needed. So we're there now, we're knowing what colour to point. But where we're used to seeing the Gatehouse as a very much a greeny, horrible mess with but a uniform sandstone colour, there will be visible pointing, because that's how it looks in 1893 or 4, thereabouts. So the pointing work maybe started yesterday. I wasn't on site yesterday afternoon, but it's happening in the next 2 or 3 days, and then the scaffold will come down, and it'll be a really very attractive building. Okay, go on to the next slide, please, Imogen. So different parts of the site, not completely phase 2, but we're doing the work at the same time, because it makes sense to do everything at the same time. This is the reading room in, I can't really, it's probably about 70s, looking at 60s, 70s, looking at the dress and the chairs and so on in there. So that's where the cafe was. So we've been doing some work on that. So this is as it was as a reading room. If you go on to the next slide, this is as it was as a cafe. Remember, this is a grade 1 room, and the carpet really wasn't particularly in keeping with the status of the room. So what we wanted to do was bring it back more to the reading room sort of look. So we'll have a look under the carpet, and if we go on to the next slide, it wasn't a very good look. When we took the carpet up, we found that the parquet had been pretty much butchered to lay cables, which is a bit of a shame. But we took the decision that it was worth the effort. So we'll go on to my final slide to show where we've got to. So that's the cafe as it's looking at the moment. Clearly, it's not finished. We've got the decorations to do, which is starting in a couple of weeks. The other end of the building, of the cafe where the servery was, again, that's being fitted out again during August. So we want to really much more create the feel of the reading room feel than what we had with the horrible blue carpet. So that's a nice one to finish on, I think. It shows where we're aiming to and the standards we're trying to work to. And we'll go on to, if you've got any questions, please, I'll do my best with them.
That's great, Peter. Thank you so much. That last slide, gosh, that looks so much nicer than when I worked at Radio Cumbria many years ago. The Tullie House Cafe was one of my sort of favourite spots to go and get a coffee, whatever. But that looks stunning now. That's fantastic. We're short for time. If anyone's got any questions, stick your hand up. I guess my question for you, Peter, is, so as a punter, what's going to be different for me walking into Tullie? What's going to feel different?
The sense of space and feeling like a really attractive place to be. With the best will in the world, the atrium wasn't a nice place to walk into. We want you to walk into the new archway with a nice open sense of space. There will be some collection items within the display space. Again, we can't confirm those yet. There's still work to do. We want to keep some things under wrap for the big reopening. It'll be a much more uniform feel to it rather than the bits and pieces that we've had over time.
Okay.
And it'll feel like a really nice place to be. Yeah. It'll be much more of a lead through the galleries. So accessing border galleries, Roman gallery, you'll all go through the Carlisle gallery. So it's rather than going off in different directions, there'll be much more of a flow to it. Derek.
Thank you. What I didn't manage to pick up from your description was it is Old Tullie, I think it's called Old Tullie. Is that part of the change?
Nothing's about Old Tullie House is changing this time. Right. Phase 3, one of the things that will happen is to create a new learning space behind Herbert Atkinson House, and to take just about the whole of the main museum store, which is in Old Tullie, and reposition it within another gallery on site to make a much more collection available. And beyond that, we'll be developing the museum store for other uses. So Old Tullie will be changing, but it's not in phase. That's not until probably phase 5.
Okay. So autumn, Peter, some date in autumn is when we're going to have the grand reopening, to be confirmed. Right.
Yep.
All right. Okay. And have you enjoyed the role?
Absolutely love it.
Are you sort of from this part of the world?
Depends. I'm not sure where I'm from in a way. I was born in Warrington, but I've not lived there for 40 years. I started moving to this area 18 years ago. I'm not giving it's a too long story of that, but my wife was brought up in Kitford, so had very strong links to the area. And when we had the chance to move back 10 years ago now, when she had the chance to move back, for me to have the chance to move here permanently, and that's what we did. I absolutely love it. Never look back.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for everything you've done so far, and I look forward to the grand reopening at a date to be confirmed in the autumn, which obviously stretches from about September to about November. So I like what you're doing there. I see what you're doing. All right.
Okay. Thanks everyone. Okay. Enjoy the rest of the meeting. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, let's move from Carlisle to West Cumbria, to Cumberlandia. And Abby will tell us exactly where Cumberlandia is going to take place, and also what the plans are and how it's shaping up at the moment. I think we've got 1 or 2 slides to share with you, which Amy will pull up as well. So Abby, welcome to the meeting. Lovely to have you with us. Tell us your story.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is my first visit to the Cumbria Arts and Cultural Network as part of the committee for the Cumberlandia Festival. So I'm just going to give you a short presentation, and please do ask any questions at the end. So I'm going to talk about the road to Cumberlandia. So could I have the next slide, please, Amy? Okay, so Cumberlandia is a new grassroots folk weekend in West Cumbria, and this year it's the 16th to the 18th of August, and we have got international performers and a host of homegrown talent. Next slide, please. So it's set in, and it is a magical site. It's the Rivendell Festival site near Workington, and the weekend's going to include headline performances from the North East legend, Catherine Dickell and the Darkning. We've got radical folky Stick in the Wheel, Balkan dance music from the Baghdadis, folk supergroup We Are the Monsters, and a cappella favourites Mouthful. Next slide, please. But most importantly to us, we've got local performers. We've got folk rockers Trickster, JP Walls from the Band of Gold, vocal group Quick Beam, of which I am a part. We've got Anne-Marie Sanderson from Kendal. We've got Owen Evans with us. We've got a host of singer-songwriters and other ensembles, including Cockermouth and Ullocks Sing Out and Wild Chorus community choirs. We've also got Moss Troopers joining us, for those of you who are familiar with Soulfest. They were a regular feature for many years at Soulfest under the guidance of Tim Elvin, and they're a collective folk group. They've been writing some new stuff, so that's very exciting. Next slide, please. Well, I guess when we come down to what's driving the festival, it's important for us to shine a light on the amazing community of folk and acoustic musicians who have grown up around West Cumbria over recent years. And we really want to shine a light on those cultural riches. I wrote down a few points before I came down on the call, and one of them was really grassroots development of artist-led cultural infrastructure. And we hope that we're helping to connect those hidden cultural infrastructure networks in West Cumbria. So for example, Rivendell site, it's a glorious site. We're really trying to support its development as a significant venue in the area. It's privately owned by Alwyn and Joanne Braniff, and they're so supportive of community events. It would be great to connect them in more with the existing cultural community. We've also come across, as part of the festival, Cumbria, the Cumbrian Film Studio at the Gunners Club in Workington. I think it's a project by Nicky Matthews, and he's developed like a whole music studio and green screen room for films and things like that. And we weren't aware of him until this project, and he's helping us. We're running quite a few free workshops, and some of the workshops are actually in the Gunners Club location. So it's really nice to kind of sort of weave those connections together. Florence Art Centre is another example of a venue that we're going to be using. Whitehaven Library is another. Next slide, please. So as part of the festival, we are inviting people to come and join the music sessions and the open mics throughout the weekend for people to actually showcase their own creativity. There's going to be campfire singing and workshops to learn new skills. We've got a local group of shanty singers in the picture there. And we've got the Barley Hop Cayley group joining us as well, which is fantastic. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, we've got free workshops leading up to the festival, giving people opportunities to create site art. So we're actually doing quite a few willow weaving workshops with willow artist Phil Bradley out at Deanscales. And we're also developing a community musical to showcase at Cumberlandia, and we have various free singing workshops, as I've already mentioned, sort of running through July and into August. So I guess we'd love your support. Anybody who wants to share our social media tags on these events, we would really appreciate that. Our next one's 30th of July at Florence Arts Centre for the singing, and 6th of August for the site art at Deanscales. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the Riverdale Festival site is a purpose-built festival site, which is privately owned by the Braniffs. And we're going to run 2 main stages throughout the weekend. There's the marquee and the glade stage. That's actually a picture of the glade stage. I think that's Trickster on there at a festival called Nuts in May, which happened quite a few years ago now. And as I've also mentioned, we're running sessions at the Shack venue, which is a lovely venue for people to come. It's a creative, safe space for musicians of all abilities to join in. And we've got lots of local session leaders from the pub environments around West Cumbria who are coming to sort of facilitate those sessions for us, which again is great community engagement. Next slide, please. The festival is actually organised by a complete volunteer committee, and the idea for the festival was born really from just an informal collective of local musicians, and we just want to celebrate our creative community, showcase everybody's talents and kind of share its vibe, not only locally but also with the international performers that are coming in as well, so they can get the word out about the great music scene in West Cumbria. Next slide, please. Dave Camlin's our committee chair, and he says that really Cumberlandia is going to be a very special weekend to showcase original talent in our little corner of the world and celebrate with some of the biggest names in folk music. It's not just a festival, it's a temporary community for the weekend, which will inspire and nourish everyone who joins in, and a warm West Cumbrian welcome is guaranteed. We've been thinking forward, sort of, if we have the opportunity to run the festival again, we'd love to collaborate with more people. We had some ideas around perhaps if we run the festival next year, could we have a visual art showcase? Could we have a temporary gallery space at the festival? So we're completely open to suggestions from artists and other art forms. So please include us in discussions about cultural development in West Cumbria. We really want to connect with people and be invited to the table. Next slide, please. Before I take any questions, probably one thing that might appeal to those of you on the call today, you might be wondering how we're going to evaluate the festival. So we're going to use SenseMaker, which is a story-based evaluation methodology. And I'm going to have to read this a little bit because this is something that Dave's quite interested in. It preserves people's individual stories of cultural experience, whilst building a sophisticated picture of the significance that people attach to those experiences. Dave's really happy to chat to anybody about that tool, and he can actually share previous experience and examples of using SenseMaker to unite cultural and research agendas, which go beyond the usual kind of taking part survey. It's a story-based mythology which brings cultural experience to life, and we're going to use it at the festival, and if we run the festival again we would like to use it moving forwards, and it might have a wider implication beyond Cumberlandia. Thank you for listening to me today.
Evaluation is so important to try and get the next one up and running if you can prove that the first one has worked out okay. Has anyone got any questions for Abby about Cumberlandia? Sounds great. Where have you got your funding from, Abby? Can I ask?
Cumbria County Council. We've got some Arts Council funding as well, and then the rest of the revenue we're raising from ticket sales.
And roughly how much are tickets?
Tickets are, we have a weekend ticket for £70, and that runs from Friday to Sunday. There's an additional fee for camping. I think it's, from memory, it's £20 for camping. There's a slim chance we might release some day tickets right at the end in the run up to the festival. We might have a handful left. They are likely to be £50 for Saturday and £30 on the Friday, but we're still in discussions around that, and it just depends on how ticket sales go in these last few weeks.
Yeah, as Andrew Deacon said, this looks blooming brilliant. I'm assuming he was referring to Cumberlandia when he said that articulate remark. But I think it's a good way of summing it up, Andrew. Looks blooming brilliant. What's your motivation, Abby? Why are you volunteering to help organise it?
In truth, I came to Cumbria about 11 years ago, and I hadn't sung a note for more than 10, 15 years. And I connected with Dave through his community choir Sing Out. And the rich experience that has brought me, I now sing with Wild Chorus. I sing in an a cappella quartet called Quick Beam. It's given me so much confidence, and this is just an extension of that. So it is very much the road to Cumberlandia for a lot of us, because we've developed those skills through connecting with community music. So that's my motivation, to support that continued journey.
Yeah, well, Dave Cannon is the god of music of West Cumbria, is he not? He does all sorts of things. I don't know how he finds time to.
Don't have that recorded.
But at Cockermouth Live a couple of weeks ago, which I helped to organise with one or two other people on this call, Dave was all over the place as well, and he's also just a great man to solve problems and to be inspiring to others, I think, as well. So it's really interesting to hear that that's your journey to then getting your kind of getting stuck into actually do the pounds of sweat to volunteer to make this thing happen, and to I salute you, and I hope it goes really, really well. It's in my diary. I'm really aiming to get there, because it's not a million miles away from where I am, and I commend it to anybody else who fancies it. Rachel Price, who's also a very articulate, erudite woman, says, "Is there a beer tent?"
Oh, absolutely. There might be a couple.
There might be a couple of local beer, probably, as well.
Absolutely.
Great, Rachel. If that's the answer to your question that you're after, that's good news as well. Well, Abby, good luck with it, and we'll watch it with interest, and I hope to see you there in about 3 weeks' time. Smashing. Thank you. Just remind us of the dates again.
16th to the 18th of August.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Well, let's just now move just a little bit further, sort of northeast from the Rivendell site, which I'd never heard of before. So I'm going to look that up now, because these things are precious. Especially the sort of mindset of people that own these things. If they want to get involved and get other people to do things, that's really useful to know. But Wayfarers Theatre, which is Imogen's baby, which has a site just outside Cockermouth, is preparing for Wind in the Willows. And Imogen is going to tell us a bit about how it's going and show us a few pictures, I suspect, of productions past. But anyway, Imogen, over to you. Tell us about Wind in the Willows.
Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be on the call and to be able to tell you a little bit about Wayfarers, because I cannot tell you about Wind in the Willows without telling you about our site and how we began. So this is our logo. This is Wayfarers Theatre, which is designed to look like a rural signpost. I think most of you, if you live in Cumbria, will have seen these dotted about the county. I picked dandelions because dandelions thrive everywhere, and they blow all over the place and travel around. And I just think there's a lovely symbolism in weeds. I
love that, Imogen. That's
growing
fantastic graphic. I love that.
So so Wayfarers Theatre is 4 acres of land on the edge of Cockermouth, and it's basically, it's been in my family for about 50 years. My grandparents bought part of the Jennings towers, so they lived at the end of the towers, which was built by Jennings, as in the brewer, and they had goats and a field of potatoes and like a small holding, basically, and then they moved away, sold the house and kept the land. And when I was a kid, we used to have alpacas and a horse, and I used to absolutely loathe going up there. It'd be, oh, we've got to go to the field, oh, how boring. And I didn't appreciate it at all. And it basically, my mum moved to Cornwall, and the field sat for 10 years, and nothing happened on it. And it grew completely wild. So the grass, I'm 5'6", and the flowers grow up over my head. And as you walk up there, it is like this green tunnel as you walk up, and it's sort of rewilded itself in the scruffiest but most beautiful way imaginable. It is a truly magical place. And I went up there, it was during lockdown, and I took my son, who at the time was 2, and we were just sort of pottering through the field, and he was whinging about the tall grass and the fact that it was scratchy. And we went up into the top field, and I stood there and I looked at the shape of the trees, and And I think for years and years, to me, it had just been a field. And I suddenly realized that, in fact, it was an outdoor theatre space, that it was the most beautiful outdoor theatre space you could possibly imagine. Could I have the next slide, please, Amy? And so that summer, we scrabbled together a cast of local people, and we pulled together Midsummer Night's Dream out of the end of COVID, which unfortunately, Midsummer Mark 1, as it has become known, Midsummer Mark 1 got cancelled because Oberon tripped on a night out in Cockermouth and broke his leg, and Lysander got COVID. So Midsummer Mark 1, it was never meant to be. We were rained on for every single rehearsal, but we went back the next year with most of the original cast from the year before. And we had glorious sunny rehearsals, and we spent weeks basically dancing in the sunshine in the field with our thermoses and our picnics. And with much trepidation, we let the general public come up the 180-yard pathway through the trees and into our performance space. And the response we got was just truly magical. People were absolutely blown away. They were so excited because most people had never even noticed this little field on the edge of Cockermouth. And the fact that they could suddenly come up there and there was this exciting thing going on was, it was just wonderful to see how excited people were. So yeah, basically what we've been trying to do is produce family-friendly picnic theatre. So you turn up at our wooden gate and you walk 180 yards up our grassy pathway and a bit of a slope. You bring your chairs and your blankets and your picnics, and we've had some fantastic picnics over the years. People bring Prosecco and like fancy spreads. It's extraordinary how the British public picnic. Yeah, you sit down, and the tree line is about 150 yards long, and we perform all along the edge of the tree line, and we pop in and out the trees all the way along. Could I have the next slide, please, Amy? And something that's become really important is basically preserving the creatures that already live there. So there's a picture of a poorly hedgehog there that I found, who had basically come out of hibernation too soon. Because he was too thin. He went to a rescue centre. We named him Podge because he was, which is ironic after the rescue centre said he was a bit underweight. But yeah, there's two photos of cast. That's Sophie with a lovely moth sat on her hand, and Paul with a little grasshopper sat on his hand. And it's been amazing to see the connection that people have made with the land as they rehearse, because we have a very hardy bunch of actors. Basically, when people come and audition for Wayfarers, it is a case of, you're going to get scratched by brambles. Try not to trip in a rabbit hole. Like it's quite rough up there, and there's only a certain breed of people that can manage several weeks of rehearsal in the rain. But the group of people we have they are truly extraordinary and incredibly resilient. And they have, I think the same has happened to me, really. It's me and my son and anyone that has worked up there, is you really connect with nature. Yeah, my son has basically gone from that initial walk up that field when he was 2, complaining because the grass was too tall, and now he runs up the field, screeches and rolls through the grass and climbs the trees and gets absolutely plastered in mud. And yeah, it's been a beautiful way of reconnecting. Could I have the next slide, please, Amy? So yeah, there's a picture of me picking apples, me with my scythe, my son Lyndon with a little pine tree that he planted and was incredibly proud of. And then I think there might be a familiar face there, tree planting with his daughter. That looks like Chris Bridgman to me. So what we're trying to do basically is to preserve the land while using it as a performance space. We've been planting loads of native trees. Where we had Cockermouth Can, who are the local sustainability group, come up to help with that. Obviously, we do have hedgehogs on site, and I'm terrified of strimming a hedgehog. So we scythe all our grass, which is quite hard work. But if you're in a bit of a mood, like there's nothing more therapeutic than scything. It's really fun, and obviously a little bit more gentle than going straight in with a strimmer. And yeah, we've got a little orchard that grows apples the size of our heads. It's quite scary picking them actually, as they're sort of above you in the trees, because if one fell, it would be it could do some damage. Next slide, please, Amy. So this is As You Like It that we did last year. There's a glorious picture there of my wonderful cast rehearsing in the rain, which is quite a frequent occurrence actually. So we try and hide in the woods if it's a little bit wet, and we all turn up in waterproofs with umbrellas, and we just crack on with it really. Next slide, please, Amy. And this is, so at the bottom there's a photo of the cast after we finished our dress rehearsal last year, and it was starting to get dark and we were all absolutely soaked to the skin. Everyone had to take their costumes home to dry, and that is one of my favorite photos ever. It's quite blurry, it's a terrible photograph, but you can see in that picture how everyone is just loving every second and how happy everyone is. And it is a little family. Wayfarers has become a little family. We have a fantastic group of volunteers that just rock up every year and sort of tolerate the chaos that comes with outdoor theatre. So on the left, there is the wonderful Paul Davies, who has co-written the adaptation of Wind in the Willows with me, and his puppet counterpart. So Paul will be starring as Mr. Toad, and then Toadie is Puppet Toad. So all the animals in Wind in the Willows, whenever they meet the humans, they shrink down to puppet form. So it's terribly silly. It's a really wacky adaptation of Wind in the Willows. You can see our little collection of kazoos there. If anyone really doesn't like kazoos, I strongly recommend you don't come to this performance, because there are kazoos all the way through. We've got the wonderful, so I noticed Abby mentioned Owen Evans. So Owen Evans is our resident composer. Owen writes amazing music for us every year, and we have basically a cast of actor musicians. So most people play an instrument and we perform everything. Everything is live. So this year we have a tuba, a saxophone, recorders, guitars, and kazoos, most importantly. Yeah, it's just it's just wonderful fun. We really love doing it, and we're trying to get set up as a CIC at the moment so we can make more wonderful things happen, and run a bit more efficiently than we currently do. I've been sewing weasel ears under the table while on this call. But yeah, I think what we have started just by throwing shows together has basically opened up into this sort of magical idea to create a community venue on the outside of Cockermouth where people can go and they can rewild, so they can connect with nature. And I guess that sort of inner child, that bit of you that sees a mountain of grass and just wants to dive straight in it. And that is the wonderful process that we've all been through, is we've all been rewilded through doing these shows. In every sense, everyone is absolutely nuts, and it's completely wonderful. So if you would like to come and see us, it would be absolutely lovely to see some familiar faces, and we really welcome, feedback and help. If anyone can sew weasel ears, just get in touch. But yeah, that's us really. It's quite hard to push Wayfarers into 15 minutes.
You've done very well.
I could talk for hours.
So the show is the first weekend in August, isn't it? Is that?
Yes.
So it's Thursday through to Sunday
next week, 1st to the 4th of August.
Smashing.
We're doing 6 shows.
I love the way you speak about it, Imogen. You speak about it with passion and integrity and authenticity as well. You obviously clearly have a ball pulling it all together. It must be a big old chunk of energy that you must kind of be able to create and then probably fall flat on your face at the end of it and have a big old sleep, because it must be a heck of a lot of work. But
I intend to do nothing in August.
Open air theatre, there is something magical about open air theatre. Even when it's sort of the weather gods aren't being kind to you, there's still something magical about open air theatre, and the way that actors and set designers and costumers have to work that extra bit harder to make it have impact, I think, as well. But also what a beautiful surrounding that you're working with. And I love the way that you're incorporating that into all of your approach and your way of making theatre happen. So that's terrific. Thank you very much. And is there any questions for Imogen? about Wayfarers Theatre. How many in the cast? About 10, 12 people, Imogen?
Cast of 8 this year.
8, okay, all right. And it's just on the outskirts of Cockermouth on the way down to Lawton, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, it's literally
okay.
on the Welcome to Cockermouth sign. So it's
Okay.
half in Cockermouth, half out of Cockermouth.
Excellent, all right. Amy.
Hey, Imogen. Yeah, I just wondered if, I mean, it sounds wonderful and it sounds lovely as it is, and the connection with nature and everything. I just wondered if you consider getting funding to sort of build some slightly more, infrastructure, sort of, especially looking at the Cumberlandia venue, and was it the Glade stage where it was all very natural and it looked lovely and fitted. I wondered is that something that's in your plans for development, or do you want to keep it very natural as it is?
So currently, I've been very lucky to get Dave Camlin as a mentor through CACN, which is I feel blessed. It's absolutely amazing. We're basically working to get a board set up for Wayfarers and set up as a CIC, because I want to get some funding in, so that we can basically build some temporary warm, dry spaces. And most importantly, I desperately want to make the site accessible, because at the moment it's not accessible. And we did an accessible performance last year at Rosehill, and this year the cast basically don't have the time. We can't get everyone together again. So yeah, I want everybody to be able to get up there and be comfortable and enjoy the shows, and whatever else we're doing. Yeah, lots of big plans for the future, but I don't have time to tell you all about them just now. So.
Thanks, Amy. Excellent stuff. Before we finish, Imogen, thank you very much for that. Good luck. May the weather hold well, and may everybody remember their lines. One last thing then is Hazel. Hazel Stone is going to tell us about a book. Hazel, if you want to just come up and just tell us about it.
Yeah, that sounded amazing. And I just put in the chat, I wondered if there was a sharing platform for festivals for yurts and stuff where you could borrow equipment and stuff. But yes, thank you. Very, very quickly, Forestry England, hopefully you can see it, has created its first publication, We the Forest. This is bringing art and science together to inspire 7 to 12-year-olds through this beautifully illustrated hardback book with scientific facts and art, contemporary art, like Katie Holton's Tree Alphabet and various other amazing artworks. So we've just launched a summer code, and I just wanted to share it so that if you are interested in getting this publication, then there is £10 off. So thank you very much for that very lovely opportunity to show our new book.
It's lovely. We the Forest. It's been a sort of, nice green, foresty, outdoory sort of thing to some of the stuff today. It's been really nice. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Hazel. Okay, before we complete, Kate, Chair, CACN, we're taking a bit of a summer break on the Friday calls. Anything to report? What's the plans for CACN? Have we got any money left? All that sort of stuff.
Oh my God, in 2 minutes. We're going to have to work really hard over the next few months to make sure that CACN has a healthy future, and that is partly why I've decided to focus my time on it, and that is precisely what we'll be doing over the next few months. We've got lots to announce come September, and we'll do that when the time comes. But for now, I just really wanted to actually say thank you to the CACN steering group. There are a couple of people here, including Andrew Deakin. You might feel like you don't put hours and hours and hours and hours of your time into this, but the time that you do put in is really precious and important, and it keeps us on the straight and narrow. And I know that I can go to lots of wise people for advice when we need it. So thank you to the CACN steering group. Thank you also to Chris and to Amy for doing so much hard work in the background to enable us to deliver the programme of training and the meetups. And that kind of thing. They're just, every week there's a call and there's a newsletter, and it all takes time, and it's done very methodically and well in the background. And finally, a huge thank you to Tom for all of these calls that we kind of sort of take for granted a little bit, but the work that goes on in the background is really not to be underestimated. And it's, somebody referred to it once before as a sort of beating heart of CACN, the fact that we're all here, when you can on a Friday morning. It's open to everybody, and Tom, you do it brilliantly. It's been wonderful to be able to hand it over to Imogen and to have confidence that it would continue. You know, who knows, we can look to do more of that sort of thing in the future, so that we give everybody, you know, more people the opportunity to learn how to do this. So thank you to Tom for doing such an excellent job. And yeah, thank you to all of you for being here week in, week out, or even just occasionally. It's all good. Thanks.
Thank you, Kay. That's very generous and warm of you. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely stuff. All right, well, we're done now. Thank you to Peter and to Abby and to Imogen for your thoughts this morning, and to Hazel. Back on September the 6th. Don't know how you're going to fill your 1 hour on a Friday morning between now and then. Derek's probably going to watch some cricket, and various other people are going to do various other exciting things as well. But have a good set of Friday mornings through the summer, and hopefully see you again at the start of September. Thanks all.